Hey everyone, my name is Cole, and today I want to talk about what I think might be the first gaming renaissance. In this video, I'm going to talk about how games have evolved over the course of my life, how I've personally watched the industry change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, and why I think we might be seeing a new wave of developers break into the market. A lot of this has to do with the current circumstances, economic pressure, technological limitations, and honestly just the frustration a lot of players are feeling towards big studios right now. But at the same time, those problems are creating space for smaller studios and developers who are going back to classic game design ideas and more community-focused approaches to games. So I want to talk about what's been going wrong in gaming lately, but also why I'm actually pretty optimistic about where it's going. Years ago, Todd Howard, executive producer and director at Bethesda Game Studios, once described the appeal of Skyrim with a really simple idea. If you see something in the distance, you can go there. That idea of looking out at a world and knowing you could walk anywhere you saw is what created the sense of wonder that made me such a huge gamer. Playing Skyrim for the first time is what gaming means to me. Looking out at a world that's technically just a bunch of CGI and code, but when you're playing it, you see the possibilities, not just the pieces. Since Skyrim came out in 2011 though, Bethesda has struggled to keep up technologically with a lot of their competitors. A big part of that seems to be their development pipeline, which honestly feels outdated and bloated at times. It's the kind of bureaucratic red tape you'd expect at the DMV, not inside a studio that used to lead what I consider the golden age of RPG development. And that's why it's been frustrating watching a company that made incredibly handcrafted experiences like Skyrim and Fallout 4 release something like Starfield that I desperately wanted to like. Starfield relies heavily on procedural generation and menu navigation in ways that earlier Bethesda games didn't. In those older games, you explored by actually walking through the world, whereas in Starfield, a lot of the time you're navigating menus instead of exploring landscapes. And unfortunately, Bethesda isn't the only one struggling with this. The truth is, there isn't really any one company or person to blame for the state of gaming right now. Since COVID, the entire world has been thrown off balance in different ways, and gaming hasn't been immune to that. When the current console generation launched, working class players had a hard time even getting their hands on them. Scalpers bought huge numbers of consoles and resold them for double or triple their retail price. $500 was already expensive enough for a console, especially during a rough economy, and suddenly people were seeing those same consoles listed online for $1,000 or more. There was some relief with the Xbox Series S, which was cheaper and less powerful, but could still run the same games. But even beyond consoles, game prices themselves started climbing. For about 15 years, $60 was the standard price of a AAA game. Then, in 2020, it changed to $70. And later, Nintendo became the first company to push that even further when they priced Mario Kart World at $80. That's a massive jump in a very short amount of time. There have also been rumors floating around that GTA 6 could possibly cost $90 or even $100. Now, rumors are rumors, but even rumors like that plant ideas in the heads of the people who actually make pricing decisions. And when players see all this happening, it becomes pretty clear that the industry they grew up with isn't the same anymore. Studios often seem disconnected from their audiences. In the mildest cases, it feels like companies just aren't listening. In worst cases, it feels like they don't care. And in the absolute worst ones, it feels like companies actively resent their own players. Take Nintendo, for example. They've been extremely aggressive about shutting down fan projects, even ones that fall into legally acceptable territory, and they've gone after ROM sites that host older games that are otherwise nearly impossible to access. They've even shut down charity tournaments for Super Smash Bros. That were raising money for children. At the same time, developers themselves often receive online backlash for these decisions, even though many of those calls are made by executives or legal departments rather than the people actually designing the games. I could go on for a while about this stuff. I could talk about RAM prices quadrupling, I could talk about high-budget failures like Concord, I could talk about how console sales have dropped 27% and prices still going up. But I think most of you already get the picture. The industry has been rough, but strangely enough, this downturn might actually be setting the stage for something really awesome. One of the most interesting success stories recently has been Marvel Rivals from NetEase Games. It's a free-to-play team-based hero shooter that has launched to huge success. You don't need to spend money to enjoy the game, and players can earn cosmetics just by playing. You can grind out rewards for characters, battle passes, stickers, and customization options just by investing time in the game. You can spend money if you want, but don't feel forced to. Another great example is Arc Raiders from Embark Studios. It costs $40, which feels refreshing compared to a $70 AAA game. And the developers even give players 1,000 in-game shop credits just for buying the game. But my favorite feature is something pretty simple: proximity voice chat. You can talk to anyone near you in the world, not just your teammates. That means you can meet random players, help them, betray them, team up with them, or just interact with them in wacky ways the developers never thought of. Yeah, sometimes you run into terrible people yelling slurs and acting like idiots, but for every one of those players, you usually meet 2 others who are willing to help you take them down. Those kinds of spontaneous interactions are something modern games often forget to include, and games like Arc Raiders and Marvel Rivals remind us how fun that kind of game design can really be. There's also a technological shift happening right now that could affect gaming in a pretty big way. For years, developers have been chasing increasingly realistic graphics with bigger worlds, more detailed lighting, and higher resolution textures. But that progress might slow down soon because of the RAM crisis. RAM, or random access memory, is what allows applications and games to run smoothly. It's what lets your phone keep apps like Snapchat open in the background while you're doing something else. In gaming, RAM is essential not just for running the game itself, but also for rendering graphics. And recently, the explosion of artificial intelligence has dramatically increased the demand for RAM in data centers. AI systems rely heavily on memory to run their models and processes, and that demand has pushed RAM prices through the roof. Some manufacturers have even shifted production away from consumer hardware entirely. This affects every part of the tech world, not just gaming. But ironically, the limitation might push developers to focus on more creative design instead of pure graphical power. One of the games that's really captured people's attention lately is Crimson Desert from Pearl Abyss. It's an open-world role-playing game that reminds me a lot of the original appeal of Skyrim. The world reacts to the player and exploration feels meaningful. The developers have also been surprisingly responsive to player feedback, adjusting gameplay systems when players point out things that weren't working for them. Another great example is Mouse PI for Hire. Instead of chasing realism, Mouse PI for Hire uses a rubber hose cartoon animation style that's inspired by early Mickey Mouse cartoons. It's wacky, creative, and very refreshing. It proves that realism does have limits, and it's not the only way to make a game that's immersive. As prices rise, gamers are becoming more careful about what they buy. Instead of automatically buying the next Call of Duty every year, players are starting to support smaller studios and more creative projects. Games that focus on fun, community, and respecting the player are getting more and more attention than ever. And when people walk into a store or open an online shop and see a well-reviewed game for $40 or even $30, that feels like a breath of fresh air. Players are speaking with their wallets, and the industry is finally starting to listen. Right now, gaming exists in a strange moment. We're dealing with the AI hype, rising prices, economic uncertainty, and corporate decisions that frustrate us constantly. But at the same time, there are smaller studios outperforming massive companies simply by focusing on making games that they're proud of. Money is always going to be a part of this industry, that's unavoidable, but if this period pushes larger studios to rediscover creativity and reconnect with their audiences, then it might actually lead to something better. Personally, the games I see on the horizon make me really optimistic, and hopefully other gamers out there feel the same way. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments below.